So you're in the market for a sub £500 Jazzmaster. Well, you could pick up an older Vintage Modified series, or you could punt for the newer Classic Vibe model. What have they upgraded about the Classic Vibe? And are they really upgrades? Is it worth spending an extra £100 and getting the J Mascis signature Squier? Which one suits your style the best? And more importantly, which one do you think sounds the best? Well, stick around and let's find out.
In the Sonic Blue corner, weighing in at 7 pounds 13 ounces, we have the Squier Classic Vibe Jazzmaster. While the Vintage Modified Jazzmaster weighs in at a slightly heavier 8 pounds 3 ounces. Finally, wearing the gold anodized pickguard, we have the J Mascis Signature Jazzmaster, the heaviest of them all, weighing in at around bang on 9 pounds. So round one, we're looking at the body. It's basswood for the Vintage Modified and J Mascis Signature, by no means a bad choice, but trumped by Squier's inclusion of poplar on the Classic Vibe. Cheap, yes, but almost identical in structure to older, and it's lighter. Winner. Round 2, price. Well, this is a joint win for us between the Vintage Modified and the Classic Vibe. The Classic Vibe retails for around £349 versus the much more expensive J Mascis at 449 gold doubloons. Although, as we said earlier, these are hard to get hold of and are becoming expensive on the used market. The Vintage Modified was retailing at Classic Vibe prices before its discontinuation, so they are joint winners. Round 3, the nut. The Mascis and the Vintage Modified sport horrid plastic nuts, whereas the Classic Vibe kills the round with an upgrade to good old bone. Round 4, fretboards. Both the Classic Vibe and the Mascis Jazzmaster switched to Indian Laurel, presumably for both cost and ethical reasons, whereas the Vintage Modified came stock with an Indian Rosewood fretboard, and that takes the win for us. Round 5. That bridge. Well, the J Mascis features a Gibson-style tunematic bridge, whereas the Vintage Modified features a Vintage Jazzmaster style. Squier decided to listen to the masses here with the Classic Vibe and switched the bridge to the more reliable Mustang style. It's a common upgrade. Heavy trem users would probably prefer the Mustang style of the Classic Vibe, but we think the Mascis takes it with the ever-reliable tunematic. Our reasoning being not only increased sustain and stability due to the lack of the annoying grub screws, but importantly it's the ability to tweak your intonation. We're giving this one to the Mascis, sorry purists. Round 6 is sure to anger the purists even further as we look at the tremolo positioning. Notice here how the J Mascis tremolo is slightly closer to the bridge. The Classic Vibe and the Vintage Modified maintain that vintage distance from the bridge, which gives the Jazzmaster its signature plinky plank and harmonic overtones. But, taking a leaf out of the Classic Player Jazzmaster book, the Mascis aims to right the problems that are associated with the shallow break angle at the bridge by moving the tremolo 15mm closer to the bridge. We think that the increased sustain and stability more than makes up for the lack of vintage correctness. Sure, it's a matter of opinion, but we're giving it to the Mascis. Sorry. So before we get to the final round, a few honourable mentions here. The necks on both the Classic Vibe and the Mascis are vintage tint lacquer, whereas the Vintage Modified is very pale in comparison. The Vintage Modified and the Classic Vibe both have a gloss finish to the headstock and the back of the neck, whereas the J Mascis that has a satin finish. The Mascis and the Vintage Modified have chrome appointments, whereas the Classic Vibe opts for vintage looking nickel hardware. The final round! On to the most important factor now, which is the sound. The Vintage Modified pickups are Seymour Duncan designed, with the neck measuring in at 6.2 and the bridge 11.37, so not too dissimilar to what you might find on a vintage spec Jazzmaster. The Classic Vibe changes to Fender designed Alnico single coils, with the neck at 6.7 and the bridge at 11.6, so very similar. The J Mascis Jazzmaster on the other hand is notably different, sporting P90 pickups, so not vintage correct at all, but they do sound good, so hey. The neck pickup comes in at 7.95 and the bridge way less than the competition at 8.63 ohms. So how do they sound? Before the final round, the Classic Vibe had taken 3 rounds to the J Mascis and Vintage Modified 2, but we'll let you decide who won the last round and which one sounds better. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed the video and it's been of some use to you. Do make sure to subscribe and like and all that jazz, and we'll see you next time.